So, what are the key features of persuasive writing that we are really looking for in an oral presentation? You have to consider a range of factors. As I said before, this is not a research project. This is persuasive writing. You will need to have a clear purpose, a specific audience. You must consider your tone. You must have structured and really thoughtful arguments. And then you have to specifically choose language to persuade your audience, including a range of persuasive devices, not just evidence. All of these things will be explained to myself and the other person marking in your statement of intention as well. So it's important that you understand all of these concepts in order to firstly include them in your speech, but then explain them to me in your statement of intention. Firstly, purpose. So the purpose of writing a persuasive text is on the most obvious level to persuade the audience to agree with the writer's point of view. Within this, the writer may also intend to influence the way the audience thinks, feels, and acts. Okay, so there's lots of things that you can choose in terms of your purpose. Okay, you don't say that your purpose is to write an oral presentation for Mrs. Cameron because you had to. Okay, you need to think more critically about it. What is the purpose of your piece? So, you as the writer might seek to lead the audience to reflect critically on a moral or ethical issue. You might wish to influence the audience to take a side on a contentious issue. Or you might want to convince the audience to take action on something. All of those would be appropriate purposes. And you might want to come back to this PowerPoint and use this language when you're constructing your own statement of intention. You must also have an appropriate audience. You should select your arguments and your language with a particular readership in mind. Now, you do know that the people listening to your speech are myself and another teacher at the school. So we will be part of your audience, but you can adapt a persona and you can create a scenario if you wish where you could talk to a different readership. So you might say, okay, who are the particular stakeholders in this issue and who would I have presented this to? What are the likely expectations of that audience? So if you were talking to, say, animal activists, that's a completely legitimate audience. If you were talking about, I don't know, seaspiracy or climate change or something along those lines, you can think of a broader, in some ways creative audience to suit the purpose and the audience of your speech. It's really important that you explain to us in your statement of intention how these arguments that you've presented, how the language you've chosen would be appropriate for this particular audience. Okay. Tone. Now, there are going to be two types of tone with your speech. Firstly, there's the tone that's in your writing that obviously I can look at your transcript and read, and there's an implied tone by the way you structured your piece. But also, you will have a spoken tone. So you need to consider this in the way you present as well, is that when you read, you will need to be able to use your voice to reflect the tone that you are intending on using. Hang on a second. Sorry, my cat was making scratching noises and it was getting really irritating. Right. So tone. Tone is an important feature of any piece of written language, and it can significantly impact on persuasive argument. The tone is the mood or the feeling evoked from the use of language, and you will have to use your voice in order to show me this on the outcome. Please do not read in a monotone. I have to listen to all 20-something of you, plus probably 20 people from another class. Really practice your tone and your presenting skills. Argument structure. If you're looking to get a 40 out of 40, argument structure is also something you need to consider. The way you organize your writing is important. Do you have a high impact opening? How is your first sentence getting the attention of the audience? Have you found a way to start in a really creative or different way? Look at some of the exemplars to see what they've done and see if you could replicate something similar on your topic. You must also have a very clear contention. There is nothing wrong about stating a simple, clearly worded contention in your introduction. In fact, it's more helpful for your audience and your assessors if you do so. You must also make multiple differing arguments. Now, we generally tell students that you should have at least 3 arguments and a rebuttal paragraph when you are writing. Now, these should be separate paragraphs on separate, really different arguments. Sometimes students just write a paragraph and then they write another paragraph kind of about the same thing and like another paragraph about that point. You need to have multiple different points. If you don't, then your whole speech just merges into one argument and you don't have that scope of structuring argument. At the very end, you should have a concluding statement with a lasting message. Unlike when I said previously, when we did the lieutenant, when we did creative, when we did argument analysis, the conclusion here is really important. It is the last thing that your assessor hears before they start finalising your mark. Make sure the last thing you say is highly influential and is high impact. It's interesting, it's memorable. Okay, don't just finish with, and such my point was. Okay, come back to me with a really shocking fact, with a really interesting rhetorical question. Okay, your lasting message and your conclusion is actually important to your results here. And then you have your language choices. I've made it pretty clear so far that this is not a research project. This is persuasive writing, and you will need to know a range of persuasive language devices in order to really effectively write this piece. It shouldn't just be informative, telling me about a topic. You should be using all of these devices: allusions, alliteration, facts, rhetorical questions, repetition, emotive language, appeal to justice, appeal to everything. All of those should be in your piece of writing. This is an opportunity to showcase your use of language. Don't be boring. Don't be safe. Be outrageous. Be creative with your language. You want your writing to be exciting, engaging, and highlight your ability to choose and employ language devices. You should keep in mind that your assessor will want to see the language. They do not personally need to agree with your opinion. In fact, many a time I've given 40 out of 40 on a topic that I personally don't agree with. What we are judging on is your presenting skill, your use of language, your organisation skills, and your ability to explain in your statement of intention your points. None of that means that I have to agree with you. So make sure that you are writing on something interesting and exciting. Also, if you're looking to get the 40 out of 40, the words you choose should also reflect the intended audience. You don't want to be too casual or too formal, but you need to keep the audience in mind, as this will help you craft your work. When you are editing, think, is this phrase appropriate for my audience? And would the stakeholder be convinced by this? All of those skills are really important. And by starting your speech nice and early, we've still got a month to go, you will get closer and closer to a really well-crafted piece. Okay.